Another irrational belief: the conditions of my life must be as good as they previously were, and it's awful, and I can't stand it when they aren't. From the empirical side, where is the evidence that the conditions of your life must be as good as they were? We have all chosen to live in a situation that's full of inconveniences down here. Okay? Money won't necessarily solve all the problems that we have down here. We simply are not as competent in some ways as we used to be in dealing with things. From a functional standpoint, this is a belief that can do us nothing but harm. The reality here is what it is. We have no choice other than to stand it. And, well, we can leave, but I guarantee you, you'll have the same 43 problems anywhere else. And you won't have this pleasant weather. From a logical standpoint, that belief doesn't ring true either, for the reasons I already said. What can you do other than stand it? This is the language that we use in our own heads that causes us the kinds of problems that we're addressing today. And it's our own belief systems. There are some other techniques in R.E.B.T. beyond disputing irrational beliefs that also bear on the suffering we cause ourselves. And one is unconditional self-acceptance. Try saying to yourself, I accept myself because I'm alive today and have the capacity to enjoy my existence. I am not my behavior. I am not my behavior. I'm a combination of many traits. And examining and exaggerating any one of them will cause me more harm than good. Try thinking about self-worth not being a variable. And that's a new concept, perhaps to some of you. Our self-worth goes up and down depending on what we do, how the day's going, this and that. We can see ourselves as inadequate. We can see ourselves as other than the people of worth that we are. If you consider that self-worth is a variable, one of the consequences of that is that it involves that you choose one of your traits to rate. The only way you can rate a trait like that is relatively, which means you have to rate it against another person. And we shouldn't be rating other people anyway. So try thinking of self-worth not being a variable that goes up and down like an elevator. I accept myself because I'm alive today. Very important to look at our vocabulary. Not only the kind of words we say out loud, but the kind of words we say inside our head to ourselves. Instead of thinking must, how about prefer? Instead of should, how about it is desirable? Instead of have to, how about choose to? I need, I want, or I prefer. Instead of never, the word I use a lot in my head, I'll never do that. Rarely is a much healthier word to use, perhaps. Instead of always, how about often? Instead of awful, how about highly undesirable? Instead of bad person, how about bad behavior? Okay. Some examples are, instead of I am a failure, how about I failed at? We all fail at something, okay? Doesn't mean you're a failure, it means you didn't do that time. Instead of I have to do well, how about I want to do well? You shouldn't do that. I prefer you not do that. You never help me. You rarely help me. I'm a loser. I failed at this one task. That's what I have today. I'd like to thank you very much for your kind attention, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address them. Again, if there's no more of the handouts available back up there, I have a few, or you can get in touch with me by email at Soderman@gmail.com.
Okay, do we have questions? I heard, wow! Anyone have a question? Raise your hand, please. Question I have. How many of you have heard of this Albert Ellis and this type of cognitive behavior therapy? That's a good bit. And how many people have used the R.E.B.T? Oh, good. That's so. Any comments or questions from people that was it something valuable to you? Those who good. We have a comment or question here.
Okay. If we do these things, try to do. How long does it take before you can notice any changes?
Immediately. No, actually what happens is that the changing of these beliefs, okay, you've got to remember they're deeply ingrained. In many cases, I'm sure a lot of the guys here will relate to this. I hear my father's voice a lot. Okay? You'll never be any good. You'll never do this. You'll never do that. It doesn't bother me anymore, but it certainly did at one time. Okay? The practice of these, in order to remove deeply ingrained programming, which is what we're doing. The brain is capable of rewiring itself, but it takes practice. And the trick is not to beat yourself when you fail to do it. In other words, damn, I'm still thinking that way, and damn, by now I should be doing better, and so on. It's a gradual process. It's very much, one shot at a time. The trick is to be aware of what's going on in our head, okay? And it's the same when I work with addicts. You have to see the behavior. You have to realize that it's going on in order to dispute the belief and do something about it. So it's an awareness thing, okay? And it's making yourself aware of it. Anyone else?
Pete, I understand you to say that you work with people with addictive behavior and the SMART therapy. Or would you explain a little bit more about SMART therapy?
Well, it's SMART is a
Acronym.
is an acronym, yeah, for self-management and recovery training. It's a support group with some 250 face-to-face meetings in the United States and other countries. I was a facilitator and started a SMART group in Wilmington, North Carolina, and worked quite a few years there with it. It was my intention to start a SMART group when I moved down here. Then I got started on my book and got off on some other things, and I believe I'm coming back to it, but that's basically it.
I noticed the title of your book was interesting. Would you explain why you chose that title and what it is?
The title is, the working title is Powerless No Longer, okay? SMART is a program, and although the book is broader in scope than SMART Recovery itself, SMART is a program that emphasizes empowerment. Rather empowering the addict, you have the power. In our judgment, in my judgment, the worst thing you can tell an addict is that he's powerless over his addiction. Okay, that leads to all sorts of problems. Not only labeling, but if you don't have the power and can't get the power, then you're kind of stuck. So self-management and recovery training is based upon empowering the addict. And you can rewire those things. Okay, you can change your belief system. You change your belief system, you can change your behaviors. And it's a very successful program. Typically, people stay in SMART recovery for anywhere from 12 to 18 months and then move on with their lives.
Good.